Good morning. I'm Scott Mingus with FractionalExec, and my partner Neil McLeod is with me this morning. As you know, our background is very diverse, and we go across multiple industries, and we wanted to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the industry this morning. So, Neil, take it away.
We wanted to talk just a little bit more about strategy and execution. So, one of our goals for the year was to design for execution and not just strategy. So, yes, strategy enables focus, and execution then determines what the outcomes are based on that strategy. So, with that as the framing, Scott, tell me more about what that means to you.
Neil, for me, I think about it as a drive. You're going to go on a trip. The strategy is we want to go have a great vacation in New York City. So that's the strategy. That's where we're going. But the operational piece or the executional piece is, are we going to fly? Are we going to drive? How many turns? What terminal? Where are we going to stay? All those things. The trip doesn't deliver on the strategy of going and having a great vacation unless you can execute. And I think that's one of the things that differentiates us in the marketplace. We're not the kind of folks that walk in and they're going to go, okay, we're going to build this strategy and we're going to give you a binder and then we're going to send you about your way and wish you great luck and make sure that you understand the terms of the invoice. So we are strategists, absolutely, but we're also operators from that standpoint. We want to accelerate the execution of your organization.
Yeah, I love that. So on our website, which Scott just published a new version of, it's very clear on one of the pages we've sat in your chair. So at a minimum, and this ages us a little bit, but at a minimum, we've got at least 2 decades of real work leadership experience, and all of us have different skill sets and we have led different types of organizations. But it's so important to focus on having been there to draw from that experience. So even if you create a perfect plan, you're likely to deviate from that plan as you learn through execution and feedback on whatever you're working through. You're likely going to have to shift, learn, pivot. It's one of the things always talked about in technology and software. And so from your standpoint, because of that experience and that intuition, give me some examples of having been there and done that you were able to kind of see something before it happened or respond to something more effectively.
Well, I think there's two aspects to that, Neil. There's the been there, done that piece of it, and then there's the piece that is I'm not involved in the day-to-day politics of an organization. So being the old entrepreneur's dilemma is, am I going to work in the business or on the business? Most people get sucked into the business and you miss the broader picture. So I see that a lot in companies, especially founder-led companies, where they've been doing it a certain way. They're locked in on the day-to-day operations, delivering product or service, whatever it might be, and they don't look far enough ahead to see what's coming down the road at them. And the other thing that I would say is that nobody is going to execute their strategy without their people. Your team has to execute. So our ability to stay above the fray, the political fray, look further ahead and help them understand their role in the execution becomes absolutely critical to the success of the organization.
Yeah, I think, I'll just draw from one experience specifically. I've had a former boss of mine, and he would always get frustrated with the activity and action, the lack thereof. Like, okay, what did we do since the last time we talked? Like, let's talk about results and outcomes and what we're targeting for our next set of activities and desired outcomes. So, from your standpoint, what have you seen in the trenches? What works in real environments to get people moving in the right direction?
Well, I think your example is perfect. I was with a company, a data company, as a COO, and we had a 3-page Excel spreadsheet of our priorities. Now that nobody can execute against 37 different priorities all at once. I mean, you're just going to dilute yourself. Nobody knows exactly what they're supposed to be working on, what's important. So what I always try to instill in them is let's make sure that we have based on what are our objectives, right? Whether it's an ROI objective, whether it's a market share objective, new product launch, whatever it is. Let's understand the priorities of the company. Then let's take those projects and put them against that so that we understand how do we rank those 37. And then the idea of capacity. So the organization has a certain capacity to deliver. So if you're frustrated with the speed at which you're executing, if you're trying to execute 37 versus the top three, obviously you're going to be frustrated for a long time. So I always go in with this organization. I said, let's focus on the top three. As soon as we get one done, we'll move another one up. But it's that progression through your priorities. And if you've got 37, more than likely by the time you get to the 37th one, it's no longer a priority.
Yeah, we've been writing a bunch in the last couple of months about decisions, how to mitigate risk, what does decision speed look like? And you touched on a couple of things that are interesting, like how do you prioritize when you have a laundry list? And one of the things, again, going back to product and software development, is just rapid prototyping and experimentation mindset, testing before you invest, validating some of those ideas in a rapid fashion in 1 week or 2 week sprints before you make a build commitment. So I like the idea of narrowing the focus, but having quarterly reviews to make sure that everyone's aligned to the business strategies and using the evidence from the tests and the experiments that you learned from to help shape that direction and help make sure that you're responding to the market needs as effectively as you can. So anything spark a thought there on in terms of what you've experienced in your past?
I was with a company. I joined a week before COVID hit. We lost 85% of our revenue in that first 2 weeks of COVID. So it was survival, right? All the priorities changed from how do we minimize our cash flow expenses and how do we really reconstruct the company to survive through this. Like most people, we didn't think it was going to last, 2+ years. We thought it was going to last, 2 or 3 months. So we did some things that were temporary that affected workforce, et cetera, taking those expenses down. But then coming out of it, we knew that we had to become more efficient. So we started focusing on automation in order to increase our margins, right? The less labor we had to throw at it, the better our margins were, increased cash flow. That was a high priority. So we looked through that lens of automation of our process, and we were a data company, so a lot of processing of data. And then the second thing that we did is we said we had to launch new products. So if the products that you have, now you don't have as many clients or as big a clients to use those, how do you open up other markets? So new product innovation became part of that as well. So we went and found new data sources, new way to package and combine data for new products into the market. So again, it kind of goes back to the prioritization has to be done with that lens of forward looking as well as what's going on today. What are the objectives for the company today to make it stronger and get your growth back on track?
Love it. So yeah, good strategy. Focuses energy on the small few objectives that lead to kind of the largest set of potential favorable outcomes. So you kind of look at where do we want to measure success and what bets do we want to place? And you try to time box that for a period of time, whether it be sprints or months or quarters. So you can align and evaluate on a regular cadence, and just having that kind of real world example of been there, done that, been in the weeds, and this is what we saw is super valuable for organizations. So how do you figure out whether you're winning or not, when things don't go the direction that we'd like them to?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I would guess I would look internally, at the way that we've come to market. I think we have a great concept, we have a strong brand. We have the concept of a community and the strength of that community. And I think it resonated into the market. So, we're all excited. We're getting these amazing people reaching out, wanting being part of the community from all over the United States, interviewing those each individually, making sure it's a good fit. But what we found was that most people were looking for a handout, right? So they wanted a lead source. They just wanted to be contacted when there was an opportunity for them to generate revenue. And that's really not what we were looking for. That's not what Fractional Exec was built on. So we've kind of gone through that process of changing the strategy, the way that we interview, making sure people understand that, they're here to grow their own business as well as growing the brand with the rest of us, making us the collective stronger together helps everyone. I think self-reflection as you go through these exercises is very important. Be honest with yourself. Just because you have a great idea doesn't mean you executed well. It doesn't mean that you can't get better. It doesn't mean that it doesn't have to change and alter. But the motion and the momentum that you get by just moving forward and keeping that belief and that thrust alive is very powerful for companies.
Yeah, and I think the mutually beneficial part of the relationship that you build with the people, clients, with the community members, with everyone that we're trying to help and impact, can I leave them with a what we call lasting legacy of success. How much can I deploy in terms of frameworks? How much can I deploy in terms of experiential training? How much can I help them shape the strategy that we execute on to move the ball forward and execute it towards those desired outcomes?
Yeah, and I think, Neil, you and I talk about trust all the time. And, trust is how good business is built. It's how good relationships are built. And I think one of the things that we've learned, right? We have tremendous trust in each other and our judgment and our work ethic. And that's what we're looking for in community members. And to be honest with you, that's what companies are looking for, right? They want to be able to trust someone that they bring in. And not always through an interview process can you build trust with a candidate that you're thinking about hiring for a full-time position. And I think that's one of the powerful things about Fractional Exec is building that trust through referrals, building it through conversation, but it's not the long-term commitment like it is hiring a full-time position. It really gives companies an advantage to build that trust, get the experienced resource that they need to accelerate their execution without that awkward long-term, does it fit, does it not fit process that is traditional recruiting.
Well, I think that's it for this week's topic. We'll catch up sometime next week.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks.